Hello everyone! So today I thought I'd tell you the story of my Cambridge interview. So somehow it was actually 2 years ago now. I'm now a student at Jesus College, Cambridge, studying natural sciences. It's quite an interesting story. It's not all plain sailing. If you're preparing for an interview right now, then I'll throw in some tips for you too. So here is my advice for any Cambridge or Oxford interviews and the experience that I had. So I had a disastrous admissions assessment. I thought it went terribly. I came out the admissions assessment and was literally so down. When I got an email through inviting me to interview, I was like, what? I was like so happy. I was acting as if I'd been offered a place when really I'd just been invited to interview. And here we have the interview email that I received. It said, "Dear Paige, I am writing to invite you to come to the college for interview as follows." And then it had my 2 interviews and it had the names of my interviewers. That was all much excitement. And then I was like, wait, I've got to prepare for these interviews now. What do I do? So my tutor at my sixth form college said, don't worry too much about preparing for interviews. He was like, don't over prepare, but it might be good to try out a few mock interview questions. As for sciences, they will ask you kind of problem questions based on your A-level syllabus, but it's kind of applying your previous knowledge to new situations. I got up a few online and did a few of those, and I actually also went through a couple of questions with a pupil who was in the year above me at my college who had got a place at Cambridge. I think the best prep that I did was literally just looking over all my A-level notes and looking over my personal statement, because they can ask you about your personal statement at interview. They can tell if people have rehearsed answers, so whatever you do, don't learn your answers off by heart. Your interviewers can tell. So my interviews were at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning. So I decided I wanted to get to Cambridge the night before my interviews because I didn't want to be in a rush in the morning trying to get to Cambridge on time because I live a few hours away from Cambridge. So my dad actually drove me up to Cambridge and we stayed in a hotel near the college I was being interviewed in. There was the option to stay at the college, but they wouldn't have been able to provide accommodation for my dad as well, and he was driving me to Cambridge, so he needed somewhere to stay. The whole idea of staying at the hotel was that so I'd get a good night's rest before my interview. Let me tell you what happened next. It all started off well. We went down for a meal in the hotel restaurant. I had a burger and I took my flashcards with me while we were eating as well. So wasn't chatting much to my dad, but you know, he understood. I was revising my A-level notes. I was looking over my personal statement, you know. So we went back to the room and I continued revising until some party music started just outside the window. And it was like, okay, fine, cool, sure, that will last like, what, an hour tops. So, you know, I tried to work through the noise, but the party music just kept going. It just was all evening. This party music was blaring out outside, and it was like a field outside our window with a big tent in it, so there was obviously some sort of Christmas party going on, and I was just trying to concentrate on my notes and stuff and prepare for my interview, but there was this loud music and I was thinking, oh no. We got ready for bed because it was bedtime eventually, and then it was like midnight and the party music was still going on, and I was like, I need to get to sleep. I've got an interview tomorrow morning. So my dad rang up reception and was like, do you know when this party music's gonna stop? Like, what is this music? And they were like, oh, it's nothing to do with us. They blamed it on the local council. And then we suddenly thought, well, what if they have a spare room in another part of the hotel? So we rang back and we were like, do you have another room anywhere else? And they were like, no, sorry, we're fully booked. And then we rang up again, because the music still hadn't stopped. My dad was like, can I have the number of the environmental health noise officer on the local council to complain? At which point they were like, oh, actually, we have a spare room on the other side of the hotel, so you can move to that room right now. So suddenly a spare room came out of nowhere. Funny how that happened, isn't it? It was 1 o'clock at this point. In the morning, we were in our bedclothes, in our pyjamas, and had to transfer rooms with all our stuff. But it was worth it because once we got there, this new room was much quieter. It was in a different part of the hotel, and I did end up having a good night's sleep. Got up the next morning, we were wandering down to breakfast. We passed loads of signs that were like, it's the noise-free zone, and we were thinking, no it's not. We just looked up online out of interest, like who was hosting these Christmas parties. And it was the hotel itself. the hotel itself were advertising these Christmas parties. I know. We'll move on from this anyway. My dad drove me to Jesus College. At this point I was feeling extremely sick. I really wanted this place at Cambridge, so I was putting a lot of pressure on myself for interview. We got to the college, my dad dropped me off and he was like, well, off you go then. So here I have a map of Jesus College that I was given. To be honest, the whole place seemed massive. Like, now I've been at the college for a year, it does not seem that big, but at the time it was just really big and daunting. I got to the old college bar where all the other applicants were waiting, and there was a team of student helpers who were there to say hi and told me to take a seat. I took a seat at one of the tables. I looked around me and I thought, oh god, because there were loads of people wearing suits and really smart business dress, and I was like, okay, I haven't quite made that much of an effort. I've actually got what I wore with me, so I'm just going to show you. Now, actually, in hindsight, I actually feel like this is quite smart, but just at the time, I felt really underdressed compared to everyone else. But I think it's really not necessary to dress up. I'd honestly say if you're going for interviews, just be comfortable, because all they care about is your brain. If you're wearing jeans or a suit, it will not make any difference on whether you're successful or not. Now, this is what I was comfy in. My black leather skirt, which I love. I had woolly tights on because it was freezing cold winter. And a blouse. This lovely blouse. I tried to make small talk with some of the other applicants who all seemed pleasant, all equally nervous. And I was speaking to one girl who was sitting on the table. She was applying for engineering, I think. And we were like discussing our hobbies and stuff. And she was like, oh, do you have any hobbies then? Do you play any instruments? And I was like, oh yeah, I play clarinet and saxophone. And she was like, oh, how funny! I play clarinet and saxophone too. I have grade 8 in both of them and all these diplomas. And I was like, whoa, I just play in my local youth band. And then she was like, do you play any sport? And I was like, well, I used to do netball when I was very young. I haven't played in years, but I think I might take it up when I'm at uni again because I quite enjoyed it. And she was like, oh my god, how funny! I'm on the Team GB netball team. And I was like, you're amazing. And then there's me. Then there's me. What am I doing here? Why am I interviewing here when there's all these amazing people here? She was perfectly nice, like really nice, and she wasn't bragging or anything, but I just found it quite funny. So I was just like, it's cool, Paige, don't be intimidated. Everyone here is obviously gunning for a place, and you know, everyone means business, but you are as good as them all. You are good at your subject. And then it came to the time where I had to go to my interview, my first interview at 9 o'clock. So I went up to the student desk and I was like, well, can one of you take me to my interview? Which they said, yeah, sure. So they took me down and I was seated on a chair in an archway outside the office where my interview was going to be held. And it was freezing. I didn't bring my coat, I left it in the bar. So I was sitting on this chair outside, shivering, nervous for a good 5 minutes. I eventually got into my interview, shook my interviewer's hands. I was like, hi. Pleased to meet you. I sat down and I got hit with questions. It started off nice and easy. They were like, what's your favourite acid? And I was like, ethanoic acid. And then they just started asking me questions and getting me to draw curly arrows and these organic molecules, and I was thinking, what am I doing? I don't know. Oh, I felt so slow at one point, like I just wasn't grasping what the interviewer was wanting me to get. And she was like, oh, why don't you do this? And I was like, oh yeah, and why don't you do this? And I was like, oh yeah. So I felt like I hadn't got off to the best start. And then I got asked a question on physics. Oh, I can't even remember much about these, it's such a blur. But it was like calculating resistance of combinations and potential difference between different points in a circuit. Again, I felt like I was very slow, but I think maybe everyone feels that way because interviews are supposed to be challenging, so they're always going to push you as far as they possibly can. After much prompting, I eventually reached the point where the interviewers were like, okay, and then they gave me like some sort of 3D object that I had to apply what I'd just been doing with them on paper to, and then I was like, oh, and I got it first time. Maybe that shows I'm teachable, because they like people who can learn from them. They don't want people who can't be taught and who can't change their ideas. You have to have quite an open mindset. Like if you make a suggestion about a way to solve a question and it's not quite right, they want you to be able to like change track if they like kind of suggest otherwise. So you don't want to be like fixed on one idea. I think the thing is in these interviews is just to think out loud and not go quiet. Like there was a time where I went quiet for a good 30 seconds and did not say anything, and they were like, Paige, what are you thinking? And I was like, ha ha ha, sorry, forgot to talk out loud. It wasn't like I totally got a complete mind blank. So yeah, it was nerve-wracking and I did feel like a bit stupid at times, but obviously they're gonna push you. Like, what was I expecting? But I came out that interview like, oh my god, that was absolutely awful. I don't think that could have gone worse. But it was like, right, got to get ready for the second interview now. I had to find my own way back to the college bar, and then I sat down again and I was chatting to the same girl as before, because this poor girl had had like 5 hours or something between her interviews to wait around. So I was lucky when I only had an hour between my interviews. Oh, and the other thing was there were really big signs on all the tables like you must not discuss your interviews at all, for obvious reasons, like giving people unfair advantages. You're not to discuss interviews. But I sat down and this girl was like, oh my god, I just forgot my SUVAT equations in my interview. And she was interviewing for a different subject, but I was like, oh my god, don't speak to me, we must not discuss interviews. I was looking behind me like, oh my god, I'm gonna be kicked out, that's it for me. So I was like, yeah, let's stop talking right now. But yeah, this girl, had she not seen the sign? Like, rebellious right there, but anyway. I like had to psych myself up for my second interview, and then it was time. And I was like, right, off we go. So I got the student helper again to take me to my second interview location. There was a piece of graph paper on the table and I was thinking, oh no, it's graph work. And sure enough, they were like, plot this graph for us. And then I got asked questions and it was like more graph sketching. I had a second question which was on vectors, and it was like a boat crossing a river and problems to do with that. And I actually felt this interview went much better than the first one. And I don't know whether it's just because my interviewers were more like encouraging or whether I actually was doing better. I'm not sure, but it just felt to me like this interview went better than my first one. When I got something right or when I said something good, they were like, yes! And I was like, oh, you're pleased for me too. I'm pleased I got there too. Yeah, I thought my second interview was okay. I'm talking relatively here though. Like, I felt like both went absolutely awful at the time, but I thought my second one went better than my first one. Oh, there was a funny moment though. They'd asked a question on a topic and I was like completely blank, and I was giving them suggestions and I think they almost chuckled at some of my suggestions because they were that laughable. And they were like, have you studied this topic at A-level? And I was like, yeah, I just don't know my stuff. But if you haven't studied a topic at A-level, let them know, because there might sometimes be an instance where your school might not have covered that topic yet and they might presume you have, so let them know. I didn't get asked anything about my personal statement in either of my interviews, but I know other people did, so yeah, just know your personal statement inside out. Like, be prepared to answer questions on it, because I know for humanities it's almost guaranteed that you're going to have to answer questions about stuff you wrote about in your personal statement. And even for sciences, I know people who did get asked about it. I just clearly didn't write anything of interest that they wanted to ask me about. By the second interview, I had actually got into the swing of the whole interview thing as well. Like, I felt more comfortable, and actually, how often do you get the opportunity to sit and discuss your subject with like these top academics? Like, it's not that often. It was just quite an exciting experience really, and I did actually quite enjoy it. So yeah, eventually my second interview ended, so that was my 40 minutes worth of interviews done, and I was free to go. So I popped back to the bar, grabbed my coat, I said goodbye to the friends I'd made in the bar and wished them luck. I left college and my dad picked me up outside the college. I got in the car and I was like, oh my god, that was horrific. So I told my dad like about both of my interviews in great detail. Like, I tell very long stories, as you can probably tell right now. I told him all the questions and literally everything that went on, and then he was like, well, it doesn't sound that bad. It sounds like you've shown you're teachable and that you've actually grasp the concepts once they've prompted you. And I was like, yeah, but they had to prompt me so much. I was like, I've done my best and that's all I can do, and actually it was a really good experience and I'm glad I've done it. When I went back to my sixth form, like, some of my teachers asked me how it went and I really talked myself down. I was like, they were awful, like terrible, and I literally knew nothing. And then meanwhile, there was other people at my college who had just come back from interviews at Oxbridge, and they were going, oh yeah, the interviews went really, really well, and I smashed them, and I was just there like, oh, great. And then the offers come along a month later, and I got an offer, and some of the people who were really confident did not get an offer. So what does that tell you about how you can judge how well your interviews go? You can't. Literally everyone finds them awful, and if you found them good, you're just weird. So yeah, that is the story of my interview experience. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you do have an interview this year, best of luck. Please do like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it, and hit the notification bell so you are notified when I next upload. And yeah, I will see you soon with another video. Bye!